Great. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. What's that? Oh, yeah. You can go sit down there. You know, just building on Jordan's point about collaboration, and with all of the nonprofits and the agencies and people wanting to do good, it's really important for the collaboration. He mentioned about Master Provisions. That was one of our fast pitch winners and was connected then also with Flywheel for their social enterprise. So there's a collaboration where any of our investees that would be interested in social enterprise, we can work together with them. Also for Design Impact, we get one of those big, hairy, audacious challenges with one of our investees. We at SVP, we could work with Design Impact for that. And then with Impact 100, we have several partners who are Impact 100 and SVP. I'm also an Impact 100 partner, and I'm really happy about that. And between that, we can find those nonprofits who really don't have the sustainable capability or the strategy yet. To really get one of those big awards from Impact 100, we in SVP can work together with them to build them up to get on the radar to participate in those big awards. So it's a great collaborative opportunity here. And speaking of which, then we're gonna turn over to our keynote speaker, Nancy, and I'm going to invite Wendy to come up and introduce her. Wendy, of course, is the CEO of Centrifuge and the master guru venture chick, did we say, for Greater Cincinnati. So there you go.
Okay, I'm not sure I can live up to that.
The startup chick.
Yeah, startup chick, I think that's what she meant to say. It's all good. Being a chick's good. I like that. So I've got 3 pieces to cover. One is to check in on you guys, first-timers to Union Hall. Second, I want to make a little statement around SVP, right? Because I do have direct experience, and I want to share that direct experience with an eye towards maybe that triggering some of your appetite for the same. And then I'll do the good fortune I have to introduce my friend Nancy. So how many are here for the first time in Union Hall? Wowie zowie, I love that. Yay. So welcome. This is 35,000 square feet that we are so very fortunate to have, that host creative spirits that are, building digital businesses. Those digital businesses primarily will need, of course, customers, but also venture capital. So it's a really special space that we're just now energizing, I would say, to its highest and best use. And it's just such an honor to have you guys here. I mean, any gathering and convening body like this activity is really important, I think, to create the soul of Union Hall. I mean, otherwise it's panels and, cool sofas or whatever. So please, I would say, go back and tell others about what you experienced here, not just with each other, but just the overall idea of what Union Hall stands for, which is all around innovation, building the next future of business for our region. And that I take that responsibility as important as you would imagine me to take it. Now, number 2. So I learned about SVP. It was very serendipitous, really. I had just completed a big haul in a business trajectory, as many of you have and are doing. Actually, my former partner, Alston Gardner, is here tonight, which is a real honor to have him here. But we'd taken, a 10-year, 12-year journey. We built a business separately, and then we were acquired by his business and then acquired by another one. That's how it rolls, right? And my then husband and I moved to Boulder. And I had money in the bank really for the first time in my whole life. So I had no money until I had money. Because every penny I had, I wasn't a corporate executive like many of you. I wasn't. I never had that job. I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really call myself an entrepreneur either. I was a business builder, right? But the point is, I never had money. And so then I had this money in the bank, and my husband wanted us to move to this place. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, let's go. And we went. And this whole concept of philanthropy was just overwhelming to me. I had no children, right? I had some stepchildren, but I had no ability to grok or frame what it really meant to give back. Now that may sound weird, especially in Cincinnati, because you guys are the most philanthropic community I've ever met in my whole life. I mean, it's give and give and give, and time and talent, energy and beautiful buildings. So I'm here to learn that from you. But the story I experienced was very, very different because I was very paralyzed. And I remember looking up in the dictionary what philanthropy meant. I'm like, that sounds like what rich people do. And then I remembered that I was. And I went, oh, so then what's my responsibility? And then there's the normal stuff where you give to your school, like Alston did, right, at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I went to Ole Miss. I'm like, do I want to do that? I'm just not sure. You know, I could, and I was paralyzed. So what did I do? I found this organization in Boulder, right? Social Venture Partners. I was introduced by a brand new person I'd met like at a coffee shop, for God's sake. And she triggered me with one idea. It was like, don't worry about being a philanthropist. You may not ever want to wear that, but you have capacity that you can share with others. Now that I could relate to, right? And she said, you know, why don't you come and check it out? Because there are lots of people like you. She didn't use the word retire because that was freaking me out. Right? She said, lots of people like you that are really smart, that have built businesses, and we need you to share your capacity with nonprofits. Remember, I didn't know what a nonprofit was ever, right? Honestly, I'm just not from that world. It made a big difference for me at a time it was very difficult. I didn't know who I was anymore. I'd sold my business. I was in a new town. I knew no one, kind of like here in Cincinnati 18 months ago, frankly. So I do this often to kind of keep it fresh. But the group I was part of was a significant group, and I sat and shared ideas around sales and marketing, which is my functional expertise with nonprofits. It made a difference. So this organization, although I'm just meeting this group here in Cincinnati, it's perfectly aligned, in my view, with the expertise of this region, because we have so many global executives from all these big co's, that's what we call them here, large companies, that are now taking a different path. So I would say, if you have the desire, don't worry about the check part, because my guess is you're already philanthropists because you live in Cincinnati. Everyone here is. But what you should be thinking about doing is working this heart and this head, right, towards a group, a nonprofit that really needs that expertise. So that is like an advisory role or a mentor role. So that's my pitch, right? That's my pitch. Right? Because I don't think the check is material. I think the engagement is material, and giving back your capacity is material. And I think people need that here, right? I think that's important. Okay, so that's the building. That's my pitch for SVP. So now let me talk to you about my friend Nancy. So I have been teaching my colleagues in the region to not read bios because that's old school, right? That's what LinkedIn's for, right? And you guys did a great thing, and you took everything and put it in a brochure. So I would expect you, because you are respectful professionals, to have read this about my friend Nancy. So I'm just saying, check, because I'll get to do something more creative. So now that we know that she is a global executive from very high-profile companies that are based in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. So that's cool. That's all good. And the work she did there was significant as an executive team member on these very large companies, Apple and Tandem, and Next. So this was a big deal. But then there's a time, right, where we all experience a new path. And that's the path where I met her. I didn't know her before. Didn't know her at all. So here's how I would talk about her. First of all, do you know these women that you meet, because there's so many here, they are strong, 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 yet they're also very sensitive, right? So they're this, and then they're very sensitive and almost vulnerable. That's Nancy. Number two, in our town we have so many smart women, they're MBAs and they've traveled the world and yah. And yet they're learners, they're curious for new things, they want to know. That's Nancy. What about this? We have so many strategists here. I'm the chief strategy officer of, and I've been the strategist over Geneva. You know, we got more of those than we can count here in our region. And yay us. I also love folks who can get shit done, right? I'm just saying, right? I love the big brainiacs. They're all good, and they've got their 4 options and all their hypothesis around each. This woman has that, plus she knows how to lead a team, small, direct, or virtual, and execute on a vision that most people would think is not even possible. And I saw her do that really in our own form of social venture partners. And I watched that firsthand. And then lastly, you know, this whole concept of power that a lot of people are caught up in, especially in our current presidential election. Won't comment on that too much. But I think the best form of power is very subtle, right? It doesn't need to be spoken. You don't have to brag. You don't have to say this or that, and I was that, or I was this, and now I am. You just kind of know when you're with it, right? When you're with her, that there is a sense of self and clarity and strength that's very special. So it is my treat to have her here to speak to you, my new friends in Cincinnati.
I think I can just sit down and let Wendy speak. There's reasons you find amazing friends along this journey. And I'm so happy that the journey has brought me to Cincinnati tonight, and that you've opened this beautiful place, that SVP reached out through a Wendy connection, because there is no one who is better at connecting the world than Wendy Lee, and have created these bridges in which we can come together to share great experiences. And it's just a joy for me to be able to come and really do 3 different things. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I don't think I can explain it the way Wendy does, but I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. It did come up and through some interesting arcs of business history, and then what comes from a journey afterwards. And then I do want to share a couple of observations on where I think engaged philanthropy is going and where it needs a lot of brilliant people helping so we can overcome some of those obstacles. And I'm thinking this is the right audience, with all of the power you bring, to really have a dialogue with our other brilliant panelists. Maybe we'll do a little design thinking up here at the end of the night with some stickies and figure out how to solve some of these intrinsic problems that we're really all struggling to solve. So I am originally from the Midwest. I was born in Minneapolis and lived in St. Paul. I'm the youngest of 6 children, so I come from a big family. I was fortunate enough in grade school, my family relocated to California, so I kind of came of age in the Bay Area at a very interesting time in our country's history. There was the Vietnam War was protesting, the free speech movement was very active in the Bay Area, and there was just an opportunity to see so much going on that was causing disruption in the force. And now, I think I always took note maybe of what was going on, and when you're the youngest of 6, you learn a lot from your older siblings. One of my older siblings went off to Stanford, and my mother was sitting listening, and the Venceremos, the student protester, had taken over the president of Stanford's office and were camped out. and my sister was working for the radio station. And we happened to have it on at night, and she had climbed under the president's office and tapped into the phone lines. And they were live on KZSU radio. And my mother, who was a quite straight-laced sort of person, is sitting in her chair saying, "You send them to Stanford. They learn to wiretap. That's not what you expect." And I thought, this is cool. She's on the radio in there. So different perspectives on different experiences. I will note that one thing my mother would have been, had she not come of age at the era she did and had 6 children, she would have been a kick-ass doctor. But that wasn't in her time. That was not her destiny. She married right out of college. She was a biochemist by education, went back, did some postgraduate work in biochemistry. I was one of the first children in the University of Minnesota childcare at age 3. It was behind the bowling alley, one of my little memories. But she couldn't become a doctor in that era. It wasn't possible. My sister at Stanford is now a surgeon, so she did. But it always stuck with you. What were the dreams denied? Because of expectations, because of issues in our society that were not allowing people to really live up to their full potential. So I found my potential, I guess, in one way. I went off to Berkeley to go to school, and it was a fabulous experience for me. I needed to be in the heart of where all these things were happening, and loved every moment to be in this incredibly vibrant environment in which every assumption was questioned. And there really was a slogan called "Question Authority," and I think I've taken that to heart my whole life. I have always wondered why the principles of power are the way they are, what should be done. There's just never been, in a sense, a willingness to just accept what is when there might be a way to make things better. But one day I was, my second to last year at Berkeley, my dad called, and my oldest sister, who was living in Nashville, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And that's bad. That's a really bad one. So she moved back to the Bay Area to be treated at Stanford Hospital near my parents, and I spent the next 10 months trying to help my parents take care of her as we said our slow goodbye. And that really was hard. I was not of an age where I was prepared to admit that people you love die. I wasn't prepared. This is all about the future. This is higher expanding your vision. You're making your plans. And I think I came unmoored in a way. So I graduated from college. I was only 20. And I did the classic, I'm going to go with the backpack to Europe. So I strapped the backpack on, bought the Eurail pass, went with a 3 or 4 week ticket, got to Europe, and tore up the return ticket. I just needed to be in the world. And so I spent the next 2 years with my backpack, kind of going throughout the world and really trying to be with other experiences. What is this beautiful world and what are the problems? And went through Europe, the Middle East, Asia. But after a while, you kind of can't live out of a backpack. And so I really got focused on trying to be an adult, be someone productive. I needed to make money. So I went to law school. And I think the part of that was just how do you create the opportunities for change? How do you really become, I think in a lot of part, I wanted to be a professional because I think I'd seen in my family, my mom couldn't, I wanted to be at the table. So I entered the law profession, and I think that first stage of my life was very much about breaking down the doors and trying to get in the room and be at the table. Because I knew I was as smart as the other guys were. I knew I could do a lot of this stuff, but I had to get in that door. And it was such a passion for mine to make sure I had a lot of women represented in there. Well, it turns out I fell in love with technology clients. That it was so much fun to be working with companies that were envisioning a future that didn't exist. So I wound up going in-house with companies and really working with that collaborative environment where you've got the engineers and you've got the ops people and you've got the marketing folks and you're trying to figure out these great strategies. Absolutely loved the practice being at tech companies. And things were always changing and new technologies always on the forefront. So I was at one company called Tandem when a guy named Steve Jobs called and asked if I could help fix a problem with a company he'd started when he got ejected from Apple. The first time it was called Next. And Next was a mess. Next had failed as a hardware company. And so the question was, could we give rebirth to it as a software company? We did pretty well because we sold it to Apple for like $430 million a couple years later, and that was great. In fact, as part of the deal, Steve did not go to Apple. I did not go to Apple. We were the only two written out of the deal. He went off to run this other company called Pixar, which people forget he was CEO of two public companies for a while. And I was trying to figure out what was next for me. And he was brought back by the board to be an advisor. And many of you have seen, there's movies, books, etc., but I was there, so I'll give you the inside, how it really happened. And he wanted to really reinvent the computing experience, to make it this incredible avenue in which our users could explore their creativity. The reality was not so good. My first day there, we were writing an earnings release to announce we'd lost $1.7 billion, that's with a B. The CFO walked to my office, said, "Hi, we're meeting in room such and such for executive team, and you know we're in a death spiral." The developers had written us off, the customers were pretty dismayed, the analysts were pretty much writing the death knell for Apple. So it wasn't great. But that's not the outcome we wanted. And they said, what if we could build compelling products? What if we could create an environment in which people could purchase and sell, a community of joy? What if developers loved writing for the Mac because it was the best product ever? That was the thing we dreamed of. And so that's what we did. And to kick off that campaign, there's something that we said at the beginning that I thought captured Apple, and I think became another slogan for me. Here's to the crazy ones, the rebels, the troublemakers, the ones who see things differently. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. When you think of your social change work, when you think of what the people you're doing, it's crazy. My friends thought I was crazy going to Apple. My husband thought I was crazy. He said, "Can't you get a real job?" But we went to work, and did we accomplish the mission? Certainly built amazing products. We really created a vision around what in 2001 we called the digital hub. This is when we were understanding that everything would be interconnected, that you would manage it from one central area. It was a computer at the time, but all your devices would sync in and connect over it. We created the fastest growing retail chain in history so that we could have a unique space where Apple customers could come and explore and learn and have community. It was an amazing journey, and having come at death's door, and in 2006 I left it at Heaven's Gate, and the new team could take it to eternal salvation. But it was really time for me to see what was next. It does become challenging when you strip the corporate titles, when you sort of strip the job things, just say, what is my purpose? Who am I if I don't have all of this? Wendy spoke of her paralytic opportunities in Boulder, and it's really true. Wendy and I met on a journey to India. We were thrown together as roommates. We didn't know each other. It's like, well, okay, hope this works. Kismet. It was an amazing journey to open our minds. A group of Silicon Valley women executives were in India in order to create bridges to show Indian entrepreneurs and particularly women what it could be like to be successful women. And we were going to learn really what was going on in India, and so much was fascinating. All of the business process outsourcing that was developing, the corporate campuses. We had tea with the Maharaja in the palace in Jaipur. We visited venture capital firms. We saw an incredible amount of energy and glory going on. But sadly, when you open your eyes to the world in an open way, there's enormous issues. There's poverty, food insecurity, discrimination, environmental degradation, really tough challenges on a scale that I found stunning and discouraging. So when I'm discouraged, I make a plan. And I'm also an optimist, thank God, because I said, okay, what are the points of light? We visited a tiny village that 2 hours outside of Hyderabad where they were practicing microfinance and where these groups of women were getting $40 loans and transforming their lives and transforming the way they were regarded in their communities, where they were becoming the sources of capital, they were becoming the leaders of their community. So powerful. Sparked that whole thing. How can we see these kind of messages of light and hope and start to amplify them through the world? So I came back to the Bay Area. We did go to Vietnam and Cambodia as well, so had some really interesting experiences about the world. But again, okay, how do you translate that into day-to-day? So I had the lens open wide, but I wasn't focused. It's like, what do you know when you're looking at nonprofits? There's so many of them, and they're fragmented, and they're opaque, and you don't know if they're measuring impact. You don't know how your dollars and your time can best be utilized. So what if there is a place where engaged philanthropists come together in a learning community? What if they learn from each other, from experts in the field, from their own due diligence about what's working for the problems that they want to solve? What if they share that? What if they share their dollars? They leverage them together, but they really share their experience, their expertise, their guidance. Wendy spoke incredibly, as did Sandy, about what we can bring to these organizations. And for me, that was an SB2, the Silicon Valley version. It was a perfect fit for that model. So how did I engage? First, I went as a grant maker. I participated in a round. There was a lot of it was education, all this lingo, and you needed a decoder ring. I was very confused by a lot of it. But one of the SB2 partners said, who was an education expert, let me tell you what these acronyms they use in education were. So that was great. And then they said, would I lead an international development grant round? And I said, I don't know anything about international development. And they said, do you know how to run a meeting? That I can do. So they paired me up with someone who had good international development experience. The two of us ran a grant round, did it for 2 years because it was so much fun. It was significant, but I was having fun. So I went on the board. I was board chair, turned off the last 3 years. I'm currently the lead partner, our kind of relationship manager, to a phenomenal organization called Village Enterprise that is working to end extreme poverty in East Africa. And I will be visiting Uganda in June and sitting in community with the people who take advantage of this incredible organization with micro grants and entrepreneurship training and see how they're transforming lives in Uganda. It's just been phenomenal.
thank you so much to the panel and to Nancy, our keynote. We really appreciate it. This is good. And we're gonna hang around here a little bit in case you have any more questions, because we had to cut that off. But we'll be cleaning up here. You can help us clean up, and you can also ask some more questions. So as our last thing, I was going to tell you a little bit about Social Venture Partners Cincinnati, but you heard some great testimonials here about what Social Venture Partners is all about. And we are really pleased to present with all of you here our newest investee in Cincinnati. And to do that, I'm going to ask our Executive Director, Lauren, to come on up. And Susan Ingmeyer, who was the one you heard Nancy talk about their investment committee. So Susan has led the search committee for our investee this year. She's going to talk about our recipient. Oh, you got the mic there. Okay, good. You're good.
Okay. Anyway, thank you all for staying tonight. We are so honored to recognize Skyward from Northern Kentucky as our next investee. And come on up, Nancy. Skyward, in case you're not familiar with them, has morphed from being Vision 2015 into an actionable program. They are scaling up in 4 areas: education, community vibrancy, jobs, and health and wellness. And our focus area for SVP Cincinnati last year was health and wellness. So we picked Skyward and because of many things, but part of it was the plan they put in place, the ambitious nature of what they want to do. They want to transform Northern Kentucky into one of the healthiest regions in the country. And right now, Northern Kentucky and all of Kentucky, unfortunately, is in the lower quartile on every health measure possible. So we are delighted to welcome Bill Shire, President, Nancy Costello, who's Director of the Health and Wellness Program, which is called Live Well, Northern Kentucky, and then Stephanie Vogel, who I believe is a board member. Is that correct?
Partner, yeah.
Partner, okay, partner. Anyway, we're delighted to invest $60,000 over 3 years with Skyward, and we will be helping them scale their social innovation.
The Apple product works best.
So before everybody leaves, I would like to see all the SVP partners in the room stand up, wave their hands. You are the people who are making this happen.
That was great. The other thing that I want to do is tell you that our watch this space, because we're just getting ready to kick off our new investee selection process. So if you know any nonprofits or you are a nonprofit, make sure you've all got postcards on there. If you are interested in becoming a partner in Social Venture Partners or becoming, learning more about our investment cycle, let us know. The other thing is, in the summer, we're going to kick off the selection process for our Fast Pitch event, which is a competition for money, for connections, etc., where we coach 8 nonprofits on how to do a marketing pitch. That's a really exciting thing. We'll be looking for investees for that process coming up. Finally, in closing, I want to thank the committee. So where's Robin? There she is. Robin Hill, welcome. Stand up and turn around. Robin, Lauren, putting this event on. This is heroic effort. So thank you to them and to all of you for coming. Thank you so much for hanging here with us. So we'll be around if anybody has any more questions or anything like that for the panelists or for our new investees. Howard, congratulations.